The messages of politicians in Washington about the U.S. trade deficit with China are beginning to sound like a broken record. This is what Vice President Mike Pence said. China's actions have contributed to a trade deficit with the United States that last year ran to $375 billion, nearly half of our global trade deficit. If it sounds familiar, that's because we've heard this rhetoric before. But is what he said true? Why is the U.S. trade deficit with China this big? Well, first off, because this number only includes goods and excludes services. Here's a fun fact. In 2017, America achieved a surplus of $40 billion in services trade with China, 30 times more than 10 years ago. Meanwhile, its service exports to China increased 3.4 times to over $57 billion US. That's almost double the growth of U.S. service exports to other parts of the world. Second, the so-called deficit dismisses the role of global value chains. Take iPhones, for example. They're designed in the U.S. and assembled in China with components imported from South Korea and elsewhere. Yet, when the final product is shipped to the U.S., it is counted as an export solely from China. If measured on a value-added basis, America's trade deficit with China would fall by about $100 billion. This deficit also comes at a time when the U.S. is imposing restrictions on exports to China. According to a Carnegie report, the deficit will be cut by 24% if U.S. export controls on China are relaxed to a level similar to that of Brazil, and the deficit cut by 35% if loosened to that of France. It's not that China is not buying, it's the U.S. that's not willing to sell. Still, China is consuming more U.S. products. Last year, America sold nearly $130 billion of goods to China, a 577% increase from 2001, and 5 times higher than the average export growth to other parts of the world. Mr. Pence called China a robber and the U.S. a victim. Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown ninefold. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. As President Trump said in his words, "We rebuilt China over the last 25 years." But you see, U.S. investment in China accounts for less than 10% of total foreign investment in the country since the 1980s. Truth is, the U.S. has made huge profits from investing in China. GM, Ford, Boeing, Intel, Microsoft, Qualcomm, you name it. Mr. Pence also accused China of economic aggression, saying Beijing pays lip service to reform and opening up. That's alarming because China's contribution to world economic growth has stood at 30% since 2013. Last year, it was 34.6%, about twice that of the U.S. A report by the U.S. China Business Council shows China's economic ties with America supported about 2.6 million jobs there. But what did the U.S. do? In 2017, it restricted over 20 foreign companies from entering the U.S. market using national security as an excuse. Half of these companies are Chinese. It seems that not a single argument by Mr. Pence holds water.